Hello, everyone. You are welcome to our event. This event is organized by CBM and International Disability Alliance. And the event is about taking stock of disability inclusion in disaster risk reduction across Africa. We will try during this event to establish and identify potential gaps and opportunities in strengthening disability inclusion in DRR across Africa. And we will try to share current state of engagement of organizations of persons with disability and the governments in DRR interventions, and to make recommendations for effective inclusion of disability in DRR actions across Africa and the global level. Our session will be divided into two main speaker sessions, panels. The first panel will be start with, it's about the progress, strengthening collaboration at regional and global levels, and it will be provided by Ms. Ilham Yousefian. Ms. Ilham Yousefian is Inclusive Humanitarian Action and Disaster Risk Reduction Advisor in the International Disability Alliance since 2019. She is responsible for leading and coordinating the implementation of IDA's strategy to promote and support the effective enforcement of disability inclusive humanitarian action, response to forced displacement, climate action, and disaster risk reduction. She has led IDA COVID-19 emergency response in the aftermath of the global pandemic announcement. Together with representatives from CBM Global and UNICEF, Ilham is co-chairing the reference group on inclusion of persons with disability in humanitarian action. She is also co-chairing the Global Action on Disability Working Group on Disability Inclusive Climate Action. Ilham's education is international and human rights law. Before joining IDA, she led diverse projects on disability rights, protection of refugees, violence against women, and other human rights and humanitarian projects. She is currently based in New York, and she will be talking to us on how to benefit from local experience into global actions. I would like to draw your attention that we will be having a question and answer session at the end of our session today. So please hold your questions till the end. And welcome to Ms. Ilham. We'd like to hear from you about your experience and your suggestion from local to global. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Narmeen. Good morning from New York. Colleagues all over the world, especially colleagues in Africa. It is my pleasure to join this session today. And hopefully within the next few minutes, we're going to discuss some of the ways and means that we can make sure that voices from Africa and experiences on disaster risk reduction in an inclusive way of persons with disabilities is reaching the regional and global platforms and helps shaping the more inclusive DRR for the next decade, especially in the implementation of the Sendai framework. As all of you are aware, Sendai framework on disaster risk reduction was adopted in 2015. And by next year, we are going to be halfway through the implementation of the framework. The goal of the framework was to ensure more inclusive and more efficient disaster risk reduction and management for our planet, which is unfortunately being subject to more and more disasters. As you're aware, the world has changed a lot since then. We now are more and more hearing the bells ringing about the climate crisis. It is a serious problem, and all of us need to take action about it. At the same time, COVID-19 showed how the world and our established infrastructures can be actually vulnerable and fragile when an emergency like COVID-19 happens. We are in a very historical moment right now in terms of disaster risk reduction. I want to use this opportunity to talk to you about the midterm review of the Sendai framework. So as I said, the Sendai framework was designed for 2015 to 2030. So the UNDRR has, based on recommendations from the UN Secretary General and in collaboration with HLPF and the Sustainable Development Goal stream, are working towards having a midterm review on the implementation of the Sendai framework. This review follows two main goals. Number one, what we have done so far, how we have implemented the Sendai framework. In terms of the disability inclusion, it is very important because Sendai framework has been one of the most progressive international frameworks in terms of in terms of disability inclusion, paying attention to accessibility. For example, in my work in climate change and humanitarian action, I always use Sendai framework as an example of disability inclusion. So we have a very good, strong framework, piece of law or norms in place. But what is important is to see how we have done in terms of implementing and making this realistic, bringing this from paper to action. So within the next year or so, we have the opportunity to take a look back and see what we have done in terms of disability inclusion, what have worked well and what has not worked well or needs improvement. The second goal is to define the next half of the way, which is like actually the most important part, ending to the 2030. Based on the changes that I just explained about climate change getting more and more attention and urgency, and the experience of COVID-19, we realize that disasters are more than ever complicated and have very compounded nature under the influence of many different factors. At the same time, we understand that the importance of the whole society approach and whole government approach, which I will explain in a minute. So it is important, and the second goal of the midterm review is to define the next steps based on the changes that have happened since 2015. Some of the understandings have changed from 2015, so we need to adjust and tailor the future steps based on what we have learned and experienced within the last 6-7 years. So you will hear a lot about this experience, about this process, what we call it midterm review, MTR, midterm review. So I ask all the activists in the room to remember this, the midterm review, and put it on the top of your agenda to contribute. UNDRR is organizing a lot of great activities about that, which I guess you can learn about them, including by following the regional platform and also looking at the website of UNDRR, and also, of course, following our group, which I will explain in a minute about what we are doing. But what is important is that consultations are happening at national, regional, and global level. Based on the plans, many countries are going to submit voluntary reports about the midterm review of the Sendai framework. It is recommended that they start the consultations before the end of 2021. So I recommend to all activists to check at your national level and see if there are any consultations happening about the midterm review. You can also contribute into the SDG review, which is happening in February to April, and contribute, in terms of the consultations happening at that level. Finally, we are going to have the global platform happening in May 2022 in Bali, Indonesia. It's not 100% clear how it is going to happen, whether it's going to happen in a face-to-face or online or hybrid, but whatever form it takes, it is a great opportunity to bring your expertise from national and regional level to global platform. So all national activities can have a look and find out about the national consultations and find ways to contribute. Another action that I recommend colleagues take at local level to let their voices being heard at global level is to form national networks, strengthen regional networks, and organize dialogues to exchange experiences and share what they have found out, what is working well and what is not. In terms of disability inclusion, it is very important because this is relatively new and there are challenges, especially in terms of the understandings of how we can act to ensure disability inclusion. So some countries, some colleagues are doing great job at national level, and sharing their experiences would be a very good opportunity for others to learn. So it is important to shape this regional and multinational, transnational dialogues, especially with participation of organizations of persons with disabilities. We know that unfortunately disasters hit each community in a different way. So it is important to hear from persons with disabilities directly about their experiences. It is not possible to take it for granted that, okay, we know what happened in X country in X year, so that's going to be the same thing in all other countries in the future. No, this is not going to work like that. Each country, each disaster, each group of people with disabilities based on different features, male or female, or different gender identities, different impairments, being from different ethnic minorities, have different experiences. So it is important to organize consultations for each and every piece of activities. I want to wrap up by just providing a very quick summary of the project that we are currently doing in a consortium with colleagues, including from CBM International. This is a very interesting consortium on putting persons with disabilities at the center of disaster risk reduction. So the project has global level activities, including preparation for global platform. And one of the activities is exactly the same side event that you're joining right now. And also we have activities at the country level. In Africa, we have 3 countries in target, Uganda, Niger, and yes, Zimbabwe. So it is important that specifically in these 3 countries, colleagues can reach out to the consortium teams and get involved, especially organizations or persons with disabilities are highly encouraged to participate in the activities conducted in this project. So I want to close by now by inviting all of you to find out about the opportunities to participate in the midterm review, share what happened, what worked well, what did not, and try to contribute in forming this next half of the implementation of the Sendai framework on disaster risk reduction. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ilham. Thank you for this very nice and insight into what's happening at the global level. We would like now to go to our keynote speaker, Ms. Olivia. Ms. Olivia, she just joined us. Welcome, Ms. Olivia. She is the Principal Administrative Officer responsible for advocacy and liaison under the Department of Civil Protection in Zimbabwe. She has been with the Department of Civil Protection for 10 years. She holds a master's in disaster management, and she will be presenting to us how the Civil Protection Unit in Zimbabwe has taken up disability inclusion in DRR in the past 2 years. Welcome, Ms. Olivia.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm presenting from Zimbabwe, and I will highlight activities that we are doing as a country with regards to disability. And as my introduction, the government of Zimbabwe, we are working tirelessly to make sure that disaster risk management is coordinated at all levels. And this incorporates our development partners, our sub-national partners, and also the sub-national levels. All members of the different committees are they are also part of integrating disability in DRR. And this has become the best point and the best area to have everyone on board speaking to disability, speaking to disaster risk management. So all our sub-national levels, they are involved in DRR. Our sub-national levels reflect what is done at the national level. And the coordination mechanism filters down to the village level, where we have all the members or the citizens managing DRR. So this is a very critical area in Zimbabwe, and we consider the integration of disability into disaster risk management. We also have suggested mainstreaming DRR initiatives, and this is at all levels. The increasing intensity, as we are all aware, we've got the increasing intensity of disaster risks in all areas. Climate change is raging, and we also need everyone on board. Everyone should be part of disaster risk management, should be a recipient of information from disaster risk management area. So there has been limited inclusion of persons with disability years back, but currently we have all organizations taking on board disability. And this is a very critical area which everyone is fighting for and working towards. So DRM programs in Zimbabwe are inclusive. We have started programs with different groups to help them to raise awareness in disaster risk issues. And this is an international call for member states to have disaster risk reduction, leaving no one behind. So the central theme of DRR is emphasis on community-based disaster risk management, where we are involving the community. The community should be at the center of disaster risk management. And this we are doing through the engagement of these communities. They are also part of the analysis, the way we monitor our disaster risk management. People with a disability are also part of the DRR platforms in Zimbabwe. So we have got partners like CBM who are working towards the promotion of disability inclusion. And this is a very critical area. CBM is doing a lot in Zimbabwe. We have had meetings to pave way for programs for the disability. So this is a very critical area, and it's so relevant. Disaster risk reduction and disability, it's relevant and very current. It's current news in our days. We need to mainstream DRR. We need to mainstream disability so that we yield better results which are positive for the rise of people people should be at the center of disaster risk management. There is also a greater possibility that most persons with a disability could not attend planning workshop, mainly because of mobility issues. And with the CBM, we are really working towards the achievement and also having transport that is suitable for people with the disabilities. So we have tried to lead as the Department of Civil Protection in DRR, in disability issues. Also, communities are putting effort to take all necessary measures to ensure that there is proper protection and safety for people with disabilities during disasters. In Zimbabwe, we've had several disasters that were of major impact to the country. And so the DRR fraternity has called all members to participate and also to include all members of the community, leaving no one behind. So the issue of inclusivity in Zimbabwe is key, and that's the gospel that everyone is preaching. So with effective and meaningful participation of people with disabilities in all DRR initiatives, we have had several platforms where we have shared information, we have shared materials that are suitable for each group, and based on the generally accepted assumption that at least 1 in 10 people have some form of disability, a tenth of the person is still too large a number to be ignored. We need to have them on board. We need to have every group on board so that their needs are catered for and they are taken care of. So also the Department of Civil Protection has developed inclusive materials. We have different materials where we had workshops and we called all the groups to come in and support with the rightful information, with the information they require in their areas. So we now have the materials. We are also working with our partners in the production of IEC materials in Braille. And this is very important that we take everyone on board. We also have incorporated CBM in the National Civil Protection Committee. We have civil protection committees bi-monthly that we hold, and we always discuss all issues and also preach that we don't leave anyone behind. Then our parliamentarians, they are also roped into these programs, and they are really leading by example. Then we also have the engagement of the Department of Disability, which is a newly appointed, human resources in DRR programming. The department is responsible for coordinating
Ms. Olivia,
organization.
sorry to interrupt. Just we're reaching the end of the time. If you can wrap up, please.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
So yes, so our point is that we need to continue to review, to update the materials that are relevant for our people, and we will never, and we are trying by all means not to leave anyone behind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Olivia. That was very insightful and a very good experience to learn from. Thank you very much. Congratulations for Zimbabwe. Okay, our next speaker will be talking about the progress and good practices, gaps and opportunities relating to capturing disability inclusion in DRR in the region from the perspective of organizations of persons with disability. We're hosting Mr. Simon Munday. He is one of the disability rights activists in Malawi. He started his activism during his secondary school as the founding member. He is a holder of Master of Philosophy in Disability Studies and contributed to the championing of disability inclusion, disaster risk reduction in Malawi. He is the acting executive director of the Federation of Disabled People's Organization in Malawi, and he is the head of the program. Mr. Simon will be talking to us about the guidelines for prioritizing disability inclusion in DRR, the Malawi experience. Welcome, Mr. Simon.
Thank you very much, Chair, for this opportunity. Basically, really, what I have is to do with the experiences of persons with disabilities in terms of disaster risk reduction. As Federation of Disability Organizations in Malawi, we started working on issues of disaster risk reduction around 2015 when Malawi experienced the worst ever form of disaster that affected almost 15 districts out of the 28 districts of the country. And that was a call to action, so to say, that we moved with speed, trying to assess the impact that the hazard had on persons with disabilities. And noting from that, we noted that they were quite disastrous kind of effects on the lives of persons with disabilities. And from that point, we went into partnership with CBM. And in that kind of a partnership, we coined a term, rethinking disaster and disability, in the sense that maybe most of the things that we learned from the impact were quite new in a way to us. And that's when we realized that persons with disabilities are disproportionately more at a risk in situations of disaster. No wonder FEDOMA also participated in the Sendai Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction and contributed to the process of developing the framework. And while some of the things that we've experienced, or that looking at persons with disabilities in situations of hazards, you notice that because of various disabilities, basically it's like we live with a risk every time, every day of our life. Such that if one wants to find experts on issues of disaster risk reduction, persons with disabilities are the best experts. I'll talk of different examples of persons with disabilities, those with visual impairment. I remember being at a particular function one time, and just almost 30 minutes into the program in an open ground, a swarm of bees came into that particular area. It was an educational related. And people started running left, right, and center. And I was at that particular function. And after running for almost 2 kilometers, when I realized I was into safety, almost 2 hours later, I realized we started hearing of the challenge that was there of a girl with a physical disability who had remained on the ground, and no one was able to rescue her. And actually, it was the parent who tried almost 3 times to rescue the daughter, but she could not. And this girl was severely injured with the bee bites. And one of our colleagues with visual impairment, when he was trying to run away, he ended up bumping into a wall of a house, and he was turning back. He ended up falling into a ditch, and he became very much seriously injured. And I'm giving these as examples of how persons with disabilities would be disproportionately more at a risk in situation of hazards. And imagine a person who has hearing impairment and people are shouting to say, let's run to safety, and he's not able to hear. And you're talking of a person maybe with intellectual disability who actually has the thinking of a 6-year-old whilst they are 23-year-old, and they haven't received the right kind of messaging. And all these things are examples of situations that would put a person with a disability in a very difficult situation. And with the work that we've done with CBM, we've developed guidelines that we've even used as an advocacy tool with authorities, the Directorate of Disaster Management Affairs, so that they implement and even share with different development actors. The challenge has been that I think not all actors, not all mainstream actors in the sector will take most of these issues seriously. They have to be reminded over and over again, such that they are working in the communities. Some of them, their head offices internationally, they've actually been a party to the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction, but practice on the ground would show that they have no real commitment to the advancement of issues of disability inclusion. And that becomes quite unfortunate. But still more, we've been working with the Directorate of Disaster Management Affairs at national level. We've influenced policy at that level. And because of that kind of an influence, we've been able to secure a representation of persons with disabilities in civil protection committees at district level, at area level, at village level. This, however, is very much prominent in the disaster-prone districts. That includes the likes of Chikwawa, the likes of Nsanje, Palombe, Karonga. You'd find that there is representation of persons with disabilities. Unfortunately, in other districts, you'd find that because the policy provides for representation of persons with disabilities, what you find is that in those particular districts, they'll even bring in a person who has no disability to represent persons with disabilities. And in times that we go to those particular districts, we realize those kind of gaps, then we are actually there to fix those kind of problems so that we really see persons with disabilities participating. However, we also have a challenge that even in those in other districts, you would find that there is a person with a disability representing his peers with disabilities. However, there may be limitations in terms of capacities, because one thing that we've noted is that it's important to really give enough capacities to persons with disabilities so that they understand the intersectionality between disability and disaster, and they get the relevant advocacy skills to speak for themselves. In districts where we have had projects, persons with disabilities are really speaking for themselves. Even at national level, FEDOMA as a network organizations of persons with disabilities, we've actually set up what we call a resource team that will do much of the advocacy work at national level and even support in different other endeavors, more especially issues of trainings, because much as we are talking of persons actually training persons with disabilities, there is also the other side of it where we are supposed to reach out to mainstream actors, such that we've worked with different mainstream actors so that we could train them on issues of disability inclusive disaster risk reduction. And one other thing that we've always promoted through the guidelines is the issue to do with influencing every process of issues of disaster risk reduction, and that would include maybe the development of the contingency plans, that the contingency plans should have an input of persons with disabilities themselves, even when they are actually mapping the evacuation routes, that persons with disabilities should be able to contribute towards those kind of processes, so that the evacuation routes are accessible enough. And at the end of the day, once there's been a mapping of the evacuation routes, also be orientation of persons with disabilities of those evacuation routes, so that even the safety points should be well known to persons with disabilities. We've also emphasized the aspect of ensuring that these persons with disabilities have other people that are close to them. They may be siblings, they may be parents, they may be even friends, who must be able to know how to provide the necessary support to their colleagues with disabilities in situations of risk. And in the capacitating of persons with disabilities, one other thing that has always been emphasized is the idea of understanding that a person with a disability and their assistive device, they are one. They are not different. They are not separate. So most of the times we have to make sure that issues of assistive devices have to be provided all the time. Even when you're talking of rescue, you must talk of them as being one. And not just that, issues of maybe for those persons with disabilities who use medication, like those with epilepsy, those with sunscreen albinism, those with mental health situations, that they have to always make sure their evacuation packages are also comprising these kind of things, so that whenever they've gone maybe to an evacuation center, they should not be in a too difficult situation. If anything, even some of these things like medication, we should make sure that the community health system actually stocks these kind of things. However, much as we are advocating this, we are promoting this, it's not as common, because I think the responsiveness has still been a very big problem. Still more in districts like in Sanje, Chikwawa, we've seen most of these things applying in Palombe. Most of these things are applying, but in most of the districts, I think it's still a very serious challenge. And the pandemic that we had has also worsened the situation, because it had given like a break, so to say, because even the Directorate of Disaster Management Affairs hasn't been as responsive, more especially in relation to the COVID-19 pandemic, in terms
Mr.
of
Simon,
issues of disability.
sorry to interrupt, but we're reaching the end of time. If you can wrap up, thank you very much.
Yeah, so that with the pandemic, it has also worsened the situation, and we like trying to revive the partnerships because of lack of funding. At some other time, we haven't actually knocked the doors as much as we were supposed to do. But still more at this particular time, we have a seat in the National Health Cluster on COVID-19. We have a seat in the Social Protection Cluster. Basically, I think that's what I would present. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Simon. Thank you for the insight you gave us on your work and on the obstacles that face persons with disability in case of emergency. So we will continue with the questions and answers, and we will start with the order of the panelists, the speakers. So we'll have the first question for Ms. Ilham. Ms. Ilham, there's a question. What can African organizations of persons with disability and other DRR actors do to establish and strengthen their connections with other DRR actors from other regions or at a global level? What can they do to have more network and to exchange expertise and learn from each other and have an impact on a global level?
Thank you very much, Narmin, for this question, and thank you very much to Olivia and Simon for their fantastic input for me. I think we are, honestly, we are missing a strong network of disability inclusive DRR in Africa. We do have very strong activists, but at least as far as I know, we don't have them coming together in a regular basis or in an organized way, in a very, disciplined way to come together, exchange, and have it terms of reference and plans, work plan, and other activities being organized as a network. So, for example, I want to give the example of Latin America, where colleagues are getting together as a network. The DRR work is specifically very important to have network. So from what I suggest, and the good news is that the colleagues at UNDRR Africa are very supportive. And you can see in this meeting as well, I just want to use this opportunity to appreciate the fact that we have sign language, captioning, and we have the language English to French interpretation provided by UNDRR, which is not happening on all UN activities, unfortunately, not yet. So this is very promising. This is very supportive. And I recommend colleagues, I know that there are very strong connections between some of the actors on the ground. And we just heard about great examples from Zimbabwe and Malawi about what colleagues are doing. I recommend that they establish a network, come together, and it doesn't really require a huge budget. It really requires some support. And we in the consortium and in the International Disability Alliance and also in the thematic group on disaster risk reduction, we are happy to provide any kind of support that colleagues may need to form and strengthen the African network on disability inclusive disaster risk reduction. And this would be, I think, the first strong step towards shaping the future and unifying the voice. Of course, if anyone in the audience has experiences and have taken steps on that we want to share, happy to hear and discuss here or offline. Thank you. Over.
Thank you, Ms. Ilham. That was very insightful. There is a question for Ms. Olivia. Knowing the experience of Zimbabwe, and there must be lessons learned and learning from, something that didn't go well at the beginning, and then you learned how to overcome it. So could you give us insight what for other countries, what to avoid when including person with disability and doing disability inclusive disaster risk reduction at the country level? Something to avoid, to learn from your lessons.
Okay, thank you so much. From our experiences, we had challenges that we now wish to correct, as you said. The issue of correct database, a database with the correct information that was lacking, and at the moment we haven't managed to put everything in place, but we are trying through our Department of Social Welfare. So really, we know and understand that we have to use other ministry departments to assist getting a proper and effective database. So we have learned it, and now this is how we are going to correct it. Then the other thing, during a disaster, we used it to just hire buses without considering that we have people with disabilities. But from our experience with the Cyclone Idai of 2019, as well as the Eloise, the 2020 season, we learned that we need to have a type of transport that is friendly to people with a disability, and also to have a translator all the time when we have news and when we have got other programs which are of interest to every citizen, we also need to consider that. So that's how we have learned that here we had an error, but now how best can we correct? So those are the proposals that we have to correct all the challenges that we faced. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Olivia. Mr. Simon, there is a question for you. It is, can you share your experience of how you included people with disability who are not part of your organization or who are not part of an organization for persons with disability in DRR interventions in the community, at the community level?
Yeah, basically, as FEDOMA, we are an umbrella organizations of persons with disabilities. So our immediate member is an affiliate organization that's an OPD itself. However, with our work at district level, we endeavor to reach out to every person with a disability. And one of the best ways for us to do that is through our representation in the area Civil Protection Committee and Village Civil Protection Committees. And even as FEDOMA, we also have like structures at district, we call them District Disability Forum. And in other districts, we also have Area Disability Forum. And these organs of FEDOMA actually look at the interests of every person with a disability. And in addition to that, children are also so important. We have the tendency in the communities that other parents of children with disabilities will lock up their children and they will go for their various trades. And that puts a child with a disability even more at a risk. What if that particular house is guarded by fire? What if a snake gets into that particular house? So our membership is supposed to reach out to every person with a disability, even parents and guardians of children with disabilities, to ensure that they are as safe as possible.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much for our esteemed speakers, and we learned a lot from you today. I would like to present my colleague, Mr. Talal Waheed. Mr. Talal Waheed is the CBM Global Advisor for Disaster Risk Reduction. He brings with him more than a dozen years of experience of working on disability inclusion in humanitarian and DRR interventions across Africa, Americas, Europe, Asia, and the Pacific. Being a person with disability, being a disability inclusion practitioner with a visual disability, he specializes in community-based DRR interventions for women, children, and men with disabilities in natural and human-induced disasters. He is currently working as Disability Inclusive DRR Global Advisor with CBM International. Mr. Talal, would you like to wrap up this session, please?
Thank you, Narmeen. Good day, everyone. And it's a pleasure having you in this session. As we speak, unfortunately, the trend of hazards within the region is increasing. If we look at only last 20 years, 64% of the disaster-related occurrences and incidents were because of the floods. We also see high level of concentration related to the drought-related complexities in different communities across the region. We also see floods at the same time intersecting with several displacements and famine-related emergency as well. On top of all these atrocities and events that are beyond our control, being humans, we also see the human-induced emergencies, the conflicts that are hampering lives of millions of people across the region. And beyond that, we had seen COVID-19 and how the complexities related to this event have unfolded for the last couple of years. Looking at that and the esteemed valuable comments made by the panelists today, I think we can all agree that we need to do more in terms of our regional progress to meet our committed targets related to the Sendai framework. We absolutely need to do more on the disability disaggregated data, especially for the humanitarian responses across the region. The inclusive warning systems have to be made disability inclusive, not only the infrastructural part of those, but also when we look at the communication part of it, how accessible they are, we have to ensure. And that cannot be possible without collective commitment to do more on the capacity strengthening of all the stakeholders, engaging OPDs and all the other persons with disabilities in communities who are otherwise not part of any OPD into the whole DRR equation with the specialty on disability inclusion. And I think these all actions call for more regional and international cooperation among all the stakeholders as we sit together from different spheres of lives. I think this has to be reflected in our overall progress if we want to ensure disability inclusion into overall disaster risk reduction. And lastly, beyond everything that we plan to do, we have to make sure that the lead is given to people with disabilities in the entire project management cycle, starting from our consultative processes for planning until the closure of activities. With this, I would like to thank you all again for your valuable presence. I would like to also especially thank my esteemed panelists and the moderator for their inputs into the session, as well as to UNDRR for leading us through this platform. Thank you. Over to you, Narmeen.
Thank you, Talal. I just realized I just received a note that Ms. Armel just joined us. I'm very sorry, Ms. Armel, for the technical issues that you faced, and it's our misfortune that we will not hear your session, unfortunately. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. I hope you benefited from the very valuable input of our esteemed panelists. And we look forward to working with you through projects and networking in the future, hopefully. Thank you very much, everybody.